Hey guys, how's it going? This is Jeff. So today we're going to make this video to talk about is the question that comes up, is living in Hawaii like living in a foreign country? And some people they just want to know what makes Hawaii different than the mainland, even though it's still a state, or well, classified as a state. So we'll go into all this stuff about kind of the history of Hawaii, which kind of puts everything into perspective about how it does feel different and how it doesn't feel different to be living in Hawaii opposed to the mainland. So the first thing to keep in mind is where the people come from that are original to this land, the native Hawaiian people. So the history is that the people came from the Marquesas Islands, from basically like Bora Bora area, like Fiji, Bora Bora, the Polynesian islands, and they arrived here anywhere between 300 CE and we don't know the exact dates because it's not well documented, because history just has a unique way of doing that. They come from what people believe to be or the folklore behind it is Hawaii Loa. So Hawaii Loa is the name, is where the name comes from, Hawaii, which in the middle is pronounced like a V. So as some of you have taken issue with my pronunciations of words, as we get to the proper pronunciations, I call it Hawaii, okay, because I move fast. I don't always take the time to call it Hawaii, because I don't always feel, because that's, it's taken time to call it Hawaii, but that's the correct way to say it. I still say Hawaii, but if I get a chance, I'll say it the correct way, Hawaii. So the first European settlers came when Captain James Cook showed up here. But it's possible that Spanish explorers actually arrived in Hawaii 200 years before Captain James Cook. But the most notable is Captain Cook, who, for anyone who knows the history behind Captain Cook, he was the famous seafarer who basically charted New Zealand, Australia for the Queen of England at the time, and he went on several missions or several voyages charting the Pacific area, looking for basically the Northern Passage. He stumbled upon Hawaii on his way to Russia, and there's some speculation that he knew that Hawaii was here because the Spanish had given him the map. The Russians had given the map. It was actually from the Russians that supposedly had the map, and up in Alaska was where the Northern Passage might be, is what she was looking for. But on his way from, Fiji, Tahiti, obviously from Oceania, which is Australia, he stopped in Kauai. Was his first encounter with Hawaii. The men, he let his men do, things with the women. The women were, I wasn't there, so I'm not going to pretend to give detailed accounts about it, but we do know that there was sexual things that took place, and it was documented in some diaries that the women had contracted venereal disease because the men that were on that boat would be intimate or have sex with other women from other places when they were doing these tours around. And through that, they would contract venereal disease, and they basically an untouched population that was not, immune to the outside world's disease because they're on an island. Basically, they had gotten venereal disease, and it was documented because when they left the island of Kauai, which is where they were given a warm welcome, given like a king's welcome, given supplies and stuff. When they came back from exploring the Aleutian Islands up in Alaska, where they just couldn't get around because every time they'd get around an island, they thought they had it, and then they didn't. So, they ended up turning back, and this time they ended up in Kealakekua Bay, and they said that they had seen signs that the venereal disease had spread to other islands. I don't know the exact details on that, but you can look into it. So this time Cook is in Kealakekua Bay, yet again, fresh new island, fresh faces, given a king's welcome, or a god's welcome actually. I think it was Lono or Lomi. I don't know the god's name, but it was there was a prophecy, so to say, that this kind of scenario would occur where someone from far away or something from somewhere else would arrive in Hawaii, and so they basically gave them a bunch of stuff. But the thing that the Hawaiians were most impressed with was some of the technologies that the Europeans had, the British in particular, because like steel nails were amazing to them because they were a binding agent. So if there was a boat had a damage to it, instead of having to take a tree and carve out a whole new tree because it was broken or whatever the adhesive was, you'd just take a nail and go boom. That was amazing to some people that had never seen something like that. So technologies just like that, and there was other technologies that the British brought with them. And one of the reasons the British were so wealthy with these technologies was because they were seafarers. They had discovered that going from place to place, each place had something unique, and they were acquiring the wealth, the knowledge from each place that they would go, where they would discover these different things. And that's how they had this bounty of basically goods and wealth that were impressive to almost every culture that they would encounter that was not seafaring like this. So there was this complex of superiority that the British had. Now remember, they might have had a great deal of wealth from their travels, but they still weren't gods. So they were perceived as gods, but once the idea was up that they were not gods, that's when things got hairy, and I'm not sure if Cook thought of himself as a god or what, but because I wasn't there, so a lot of people speculate. I'm giving you the story as it's stated in multiple books, and I'm giving you the version that seems to be the most consistent throughout, whether it be talking with a Hawaiian guy down at Ho'okena Beach Park about the story of Cook, or whether it be reading a book, or whether it be going out on a tour boat here in Kona. So I've gotten various different stories, and they're all similar, okay? But long story short was when Cook went up through the Straits of Maui, a very powerful strait, the mast on the ship broke, and they had to turn back around. They went to Kealakekua Bay. So after getting, basically all these gifts for everything that they had been given, the natives of that land were like, a god does not get defeated by the Straits of Maui. So the tensions were high. One of the Ali'i had taken a boat, and at this time they had already come in contact with a young King Kamehameha. So King Kamehameha, he was a young man at the time. They described him in the journals as a brute of a man, a very tall, young man, very masculine face, very strong. And the British had taken note of this young guy. So they had already known him, but one of the Ali'i, a chief, had taken a boat, and the British had asked for it back, and they said, no, you're not going to, there was like, hey, wait, what's mine is yours, what's yours is mine. Because that's how the Hawaiians thought, was like, we give to you, we share with you, you share with us, it's all ours. We're all together, right? And the British, they just didn't see things like that. They saw things like it was a possession that they owned. And, so that ended up leading to some hostility that broke out on the beach, and Cook tried the same tactic that he had tried in other islands by taking an Ali'i hostage in exchange for the boat back. This time it didn't work, and he was killed there on the beach, or there on the rocks over in Kealakekua, where Captain Cook's monument now stands. And they kept his body. The British returned back to Britain without their captain, and the Queen said, "Well, go back and get his body," because they whatever that's how they no man left behind kind of philosophy. And so when they arrived back there, they had discovered that they had basically been wearing the bones of Cook, so they were wearing his bones. There's some speculation that they might have eaten him. I don't get into all that because we don't know, okay? And you can look into that. I'm going to say that the most accurate thing that I know is that they were wearing his bones. And the reason they wore it was because for his mana, his spiritual mana. Mana is like a person's strength acquired in their spirit. It's in their bones. So this is why these peoples at the time they understood this as their understanding. And so if you wanted to look up mana, you could read a book on mana to understand what exactly why they would wear someone's bones, or a chieftain or a defeated enemy, whatever you want to call it, why they would wear the bones. But anyway, they got the bones back, and they say that they buried them in Kealakekua Bay. So there's the history on what makes this place kind of unique to the mainland. The next phase to understand is that the land is supposedly taken by was taken over by Americans. Dole, Samson Dole, I think was his name. Dole Farms. He was a lawyer, and at the time, King Kamehameha I had become king, and he was the one who was able to unify all the islands. But down the road, Queen Liliuokalani succeeded. Or at some point in time, she came in. I don't know the exact history on Queen Liliuokalani becoming queen, but she was overthrown. Sanford Dole was his name. He became president of the Republic of the Provisional Government of Hawaii. 1894, President Grover Cleveland said that the overthrow of the queen was deemed unconstitutional or illegal, and gave back the throne to the queen. And then basically over time, the annexation had occurred, and President Clinton at some point in time has gone on record to say that the annexation of Hawaii was actually unlawful, stating that basically the statehood of Hawaii is actually not valid, because there was no legal process. I think there's like two ways to become a state. Either one by military occupation, and then the other way, I don't know the exact other way, but both of those things didn't take place, meaning there was no military coup or overthrow. So the military didn't come marching into Hawaii and overthrow it. It was taken not through a military operation, because that would be one way that they can take over. And basically there was no ratification of the treaty. So still to this day, there is this idea that the Hawaiian Kingdom, the Hawaiian Islands itself, are not a state, which means that because it's way out in the middle of the ocean, and that now knowing a little bit about the history of the islands, you can see why it does have this feel that it's different, even though it's an American state. Being that it's out in the middle of the ocean, it's not technically. There's a huge controversy over whether or not the annexation and the statehood actually is legitimate. And when you have a president of the United States say that it was an unlawful takeover, that kind of does raise some questions. So the people here, they call it the Hawaiian Kingdom. The Native Hawaiians still refer to it as, a lot of them do not accept the statehood. So when you see the Hawaiian flag flying upside down, it's because the Hawaiian Kingdom is in peril. And some of the things that the Hawaiian Kingdom and the Hawaiian people do not actually like about the American occupation is things like Monsanto and GMOs, among other things like the taking of land and the distribution under the Great Mahele. You can look up the Great Mahele if you want additional information. But you know, so systematically, the Hawaiian people have been kind of pushed out of their lands, and kind of there's also been a genocide of some sorts that has occurred through the diseases that were brought from the outside world. I stay out of all the politics and all of the stuff on that. I am not here to pick a side, because the second I do that, people want to get into it, and I'm not doing that here. I am only giving you a brief description so that you can have an idea of what to evaluate when you're trying to understand what makes Hawaii different than the mainland, and why people say that Hawaii is not a state. So, with all that being said, in Hawaii, it does feel like it's a foreign land, yeah. Okay? But at the same time, we have Walmart, we have Target, and that makes it similar. Another thing that makes it kind of foreign is, where else in the mainland are you going to get active volcanoes? You know, where else on the mainland are you going to get the tropics? Sure, Florida. Okay, Florida's a little bit tropical, but I mean, outside of that, Hawaii's pretty much the only tropical place. So you're not going to be getting tropical weather in most of the mainland. So that's going to feel a little bit different. It's going to feel like a foreign place to you, like that, as if you were to go to Philippines or Thailand. But it's not as extreme as Philippines or Thailand or Asia or Peru or any place like that that has tropics. You know, so the overall feeling is, you are in the United States, but you can just kind of get there is this little bit of a hint that, you know, it's not fully on board completely. You know, some of the things that I always recalled about living in Hawaii, and in particular on the Big Island, was smoke that billows out of like forest. You know, you'll see things just billowing out of the trees over in the forest, like smokeouts, luau's, stuff like that. People still hunt for their own food here. You know, they grow their own food, all that. So it's just some things to keep in mind. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoy this video. If you like more videos like this, please subscribe.